Welcome to another episode of Plastic Surgery Uncensored. I'm your host, Dr. Rahban. And yes, we have yet another exciting show for you or episode. We've tackled this subject on many occasions. We'll continue to tackle this subject because this subject is a recurring, massive epidemic, endemic, whatever you want to call it, of our new generation, our new world. And that is the effects of social media on not only our children, but on humanity as a whole. You know, we always like to use our children as the indicator, but the truth of the matter is there's plenty of adults who are experiencing the same types of side effects of social media as our children is. But, you know, it's more, I don't know, it's easier to try to help your children than it is to do yourself. So we will dive in today. We're very honored to have a fantastic guest today, Dr. Hilary Bowers, who is perhaps what we call a real expert as opposed to a fake one like me. Obviously, I know a ton about plastic surgery, social media, and etc. But here we have a trained professional who does actually know about the psychological impacts. And we're going to do kind of a deep dive today. And so if you are know someone suffering from the social media fallout, or you yourself find yourself having some issues, then you're going to want to tune in because I think you'll find this to be fascinating, educational, and hopefully therapeutic. All right, Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. So let's start with the basics. First, where are you, Hilary? Where do you live?
I'm in San Diego, California.
Love it. That's where my alma mater from UCSD is. San Diego's a beautiful
Go Tritons.
That's right. Tritons are like some half man, half fish or something.
Yeah, you know, like the merman.
Aquaman or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Hilary, can you tell us a little bit your background, your training, and where you, what you practice predominantly?
So I'm a general pediatrician by training. I am board certified with the American Board of Pediatrics. I have been down here in San Diego practicing since 2007. Prior to that, I was in group practice up in Los Angeles. Since 2016, I have been the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health Services for Children's Primary Care Medical Group, CPCMG. We are a 28 office across San Diego and Riverside County. We take care of about 270,000 patients and their families.
Awesome. And so this is an interesting perspective because often when we talk about these things, there are many ways to get to the same endpoint. And so, for example, in hand surgery, we have orthopedists and we have plastic surgeons. People don't know that both people can get to the same destination. So here you are doing mental health, if it is, or social well-being of children, yet your approach is an unusual one because usually it's true being a psychiatrist,
correct,
a psychologist, yet you are a pediatrician, which is awesome in that you have a unique perspective. Mostly, obviously, all pediatricians, if they're good ones, will be taking care of their patients, their children, as a totality of what they present with. And so, of course, it's going to be, you know, measles, mumps, rashes, etc. But also children, perhaps more so than adults, are going through some serious changes psychologically. And so good pediatricians will have a sort of a skill set, if you will. Mm-hmm. You, on the other hand, have now taken that on a higher level. So tell me what it is that you focus on when it comes to the mental well-being of children.
So currently I serve as an internal referral, although we do get some people from outside of CPCMG coming to see me where the patient and their family has talked about a concern with their general pediatrician. Maybe they've been able to discuss that. Maybe they feel like it's out of their wheelhouse, and then they come and talk to me. And so mostly I'm focusing on ADHD, anxiety, and depression. However, also body dysphoria, gender dysphoria, eating disorders, autism spectrum disorder, and really looking at the patient as a whole child and how can we help the parents really be the quarterback to help their care and organizing where can we get evaluations, do we need medication management, where can we access therapies, and being that touch point for families. And you're correct that pediatricians, I think, bring a little more of that developmental lens because we've seen a lot of kids through development, and then we have that to compare to maybe something that's stepping outside what we're anticipating to happen. And we take care of kids from birth to 21.
Love it. Love it. So I think you hit it on the head, the nail on the head, which is all the conditions that you historically take care of, ADHD, autism, eating disorders, etc., anxiety, depression. Well, guess what? All of them are worsened by social media. That is a well-known phenomenon, just like all those things are worsened by drugs, all those. So what a perfect segue. So today's subject matter and topic is going to be very specific. We're going to talk about sort of the interface between children's mental health, and the crossroads of social media. Unless you live under a rock or you live on some island somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, as a parent, it's impossible to shield your child or protect your child or prevent your child from interacting or engaging with social media. So a lot of people are struggling because it's kind of like you feel like, and my child is only 18 months, so I'm blessed that I don't have that, but I take care of a lot of people and I can see the fallout, and that's why I talk about it a lot. But the social media impacts is that, here you have to create this balance, let your child interact with social media. You don't want them being the oddball, right? You have no phone, you have no access to TikTok or Instagram. Your child feels like a weirdo. At the same time, you let them on and then you got a helicopter over them. So let's dive in. So what I have experienced, and you can tell me otherwise, is what I see. And of course, I don't operate on pediatric patients, but I think that what I see in adults will just be echoed in kids. I don't think it's unique to kids or adults. But what I see is that as a result of, to me, it seems like the biggest issue is this idea of comparativeness, which is I am me and I live my current life, good, bad, awful, whatever it is. I don't know any different until I have a point of comparison. In other words, I don't know that what I'm doing is really fun or not fun or cool or not cool until I have photos, which is, oh my God, look at all these other people who are prettier, taller, faster, more successful, etc. So where do you see is the biggest single challenge with social media? Where is social media doing the greatest harm to children?
That's a really excellent question. I think there's a few points to hit on with that, with where do we feel like it's impacting them. Personally, I think one of the biggest issues is that it's 24/7. There is no rest from social media. People are always posting, kids are always posting. There's always something going on. It's highly curated, which is a second point. But the fact that it's just always going. I think back to like when I grew up and you'd go to school and maybe there was somebody who wasn't kind to you, right? Maybe you're being teased, you're bullied, whatever. You had to deal with it while you were at school. However, unless that person lived in your neighborhood or rode your bus or was in your carpool or their sports team after school, you didn't have to see them. You could go home to your family. You could go home to your supportive network. They would bolster you back up and you'd have the evening, you'd have the weekends off. Now, there is no off time. Kids will create fake social media accounts with the express purpose of bullying another student and putting them down. There's the, hey, look, we're at this party, la, 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 it's so great. You might not have heard about it till Monday, and you were doing other stuff on the weekend anyway, so who cared? But now it's like you see it live, it's now blowing out your whole weekend. So the fact that there's no rest from social media, it's just this constant stream. And every time you look at something, you get that little dopamine hit. You get that little, ooh, that feels good, until it doesn't feel good.
Right. So I think one issue, of course, is the same thing with the 24-hour news network, right? People are anxious because before you would have to wait to a certain hour, see the news.
Right.
Now, at any time, you turn on the news and it's a disaster. It's constant disaster. And so you get no break. And whether
it's exhausting.
Whether your social media feed is positive or negative, the point that you're making is that it's a constant influx of data that you're processing, and there's no rest for that.
And I don't know if the kids really understand how to curate their feed either. Like you have an adult brain, so you know, well, if I follow these particular things, it may be more uplifting for me. For the kids, they're just going to be doing their friends, and they're going to be doing who their friends' are. And so it may be a more negative vibe.
So issue number one is it's constant. Issue number two was curated, which we'll get into. Issue number three is bullying, which is a whole entity of its own. I'll leave bullying out for a moment because what I want to talk about is just garden variety erosion. Nothing too egregious. No one is nasty to your child. No one is picking on them because those are finite and specific. I'm talking you're a normal parent with a normal child, yet you're noticing your child's having issues because that's actually the majority of people. And so the 24-hour process, no break. Let's talk about curation and what that even means. What does it mean to you that the information that your children are seeing is curated? What does that mean?
So to me, it's what is going in front of their face. So so you said you had a younger child, you pick out books for them to read, right? And you're going to pick out age-appropriate books. That's what they're going to read. They're not reading Harry Potter when they're 18 months old, right? Harry Potter's a great book when you're developmentally appropriate. 18 months old, you're reading Frog and Toad, you're doing, Goodnight Moon, the picture books, to allow them to have that baseline and that stepping stone. Because kids have full access, they will wind up getting into stuff that is not developmentally appropriate. Parents are not following their kids on social media. They're not sitting down and having that conversation of, hey, what are you looking at? Hey, What are you reading? What is the teacher teaching you? Like, the parents, unfortunately, are not really having these conversations. So the kids can just go and some friend says, oh, hey, check out this video. It's super cool. And you want to believe your friends because you're an adolescent. And that's what you want to do. You want to hang out with your friends and you want to believe them and you want to be accepted. And now you're watching something that's like, what? And your brain's not ready for that information.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, and you probably deal with this as well, is the body image, which is when we go through adolescence, our body physically changes, our brain physically changes, the hormones, the chemistry, this is all going through changes that is expected, right? As humans, this is what we do. The challenge is we don't have a whole lot of control over the changes, right? So some people get bigger up top, some people get bigger out on the bottom. Whatever it is where you're sticking out, the other kids will point at it and say, oh, that's different, right? Because it's that herd mentality. So now you have a body part maybe you're not comfortable with. So you're going to go, how can I change that? And then you're seeing those images online. Oh, if I only had X, then everything would be better.
Right. So great points. I think this is really important. When you gave your kids access to TV, you had parental control. What you're talking about is, hey, we don't just let my kids just surf the channels or end up on Playboy or HBO or whatever.
Right, which they can totally access.
Which you would block and you would have a parental control. When your kids got access to the internet back in the days and they started just surfing, you blocked and gave them parental control. It is much less common to have parental control and perhaps less functionally capable. In other words, the tools don't exist as much to have parental control over what images your child is seeing. If all day long your child is watching war posts of people's body parts blowing apart, it's very disrupting for their mental health.
Yes.
Equally so, if they see constant pictures of bunny rabbits and puppy dogs, it's a different image. So I think you make a very, very valid point, which is if you are going to parental control what your child is learning in school, then you should be parental controlling what images your child is seeing all day. As to what vehicles exist within the social media platforms, it's not my area of expertise. I don't know what things you can block, but the bottom line is you can't have your head in the sand. And I think what you said, which was really good, is you got to follow your kids. That should be, in my opinion, a requirement. So we'll talk about this in a moment, which is on the second half, which is, okay, I'm a parent now. How do I tread between being invasive, annoying, hey, mom, you got to let me be, versus completely disconnected and clueless and too cool. We'll get to that in a minute. The other thing you said is about this idea of body dysmorphia. And so the idea is, and this happens to adults, is that you're seeing images. My biggest issue with the images is the images aren't real.
That's correct.
Forget about the fact that there are individuals who are blessed physically, and there are people who are blessed mentally, and there are people who are blessed from a standpoint of physics, meaning talent of running. So we all have that. The issue is not comparing yourself to other real people. The issue is you're comparing yourself to other images that don't even goddamn exist. How is it possible that this girl has no acne? We all have acne.
Right.
Because there's a goddamn filter. How is it possible that she's already got breasts. Yeah, because that's a filter. So aside from the fact that you may be a little unlucky and that your development's a little bit not the same as the herd, that's its own issue. Worse is that you're comparing yourself not to the other people, but to a third category of people that don't exist.
Yes.
They're not even humans.
Yes.
And that is massive problem in the adult population.
Yeah.
I want a bigger butt, a smaller waist, and bigger breasts. Okay, you want to be Jessica Rabbit.
Right. Or Barbie in real life.
Like
right?
that doesn't exist. So I think those two issues are very, very important. What else? So what I'm noticing is, so all this is we throw this out, but then as a therapist, as a psychologist, as a treating physician, they all funnel down into certain presentations. So they present as anxiety. They present as eating disorders. They present as depression. They present as moodiness. So what are the things that present in a child that then tells you, they're getting wrong stimulus information. I need to then, pay attention. I thought my child was doing fine, and they may well be doing fine in 6th grade, and all of a sudden 7th grade, they're off the cliff. Right. So what are the symptoms that you tell parents or you look for as a pediatrician?
So looking at how a child is presenting, so what is their clothing style? Has it drastically changed from where they were before? What does their hygiene look like? Are they physically leaving their bedroom ever, right? Do they make it to school on time? What are their grades like at school? Are they dropping out of all their extracurricular activities? Do they say no to their friends when their friends come over and say, hey, let's go out, let's hang? They're like, no. And, the answer is I need to wash my hair, but they're not actually washing their hair. They're just staying on their phone or on their video games or whatever that is not. They're not forward thinking. So, we think of as adults, we often have a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, and we think to the future of how we'd like to achieve our goals. Adolescents in general, maybe they have a 20-minute plan. Some of these patients have a 0-minute plan. They have nothing. They're like, there's no point. It doesn't matter. So a very defeatist, negative vocal. Having headaches. So headaches that seem to quote unquote come out of nowhere. They're random. I always have patients keep a symptom diary of any physical symptoms they're having, headaches, belly pain, joint pain, because almost always there is a pattern. Those younger kids, they have those belly pains Sunday night, Monday night. Oh, by Thursday night, the belly pain's gone because the weekend's almost here. It's great. So what's going on in that environment that can really give you a clue as to what environment they're feeling the worry from? Upset stomach, picky eating, anything that's changing. If you have a kiddo that's coming home with more piercings or tattoos, maybe they've had an entire change in their friend group. Maybe you've gone in the room and you found vape pens that weren't there before. I think it's really important that parents understand what those look like. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think it sounds like there are two, if I were to categorize them, there's two kinds of presentations, if you will. There are those that are subtle and general, and those that are more obvious. Obviously, if your child comes home with 2 tattoos and 4 nose piercings, it's not something subtle. It's more like a hammer on the head. All of a sudden,
you've missed the subtle.
Your child is smoking a vape pen. That usually doesn't happen. They went in one day and they came out another. But I think what's more valuable, not that that's not valuable, but what's more important is to ideally notice the ratcheting it up of the symptoms. And what you're looking for from what you're describing is there is a pattern, there is a baseline, there is a way that your child behaves. And when that alters and seems to do so for a long period of time, because everyone's allowed to have a shitty day or a shitty week.
100%.
But if it's something that's ongoing, then it is something that you need to then be aware of, and then you need to go past awareness. Then you need to start digging and be inquisitive and ask. The question I have is, so what is it that you think is happening that's leading to these children? Is it that as a result of social media related pressures, meaning they go onto these social media feeds, and let's say ultimately they're one of 2 categories. They're the cool ones or the non-cool ones. That's how you see yourself. I'm in the group, I'm out of the group. The in the group people, I feel, have a pressure to stay in the group. they got to stay at the top of their game. The out of the group ones feel left out. So if you're in the group, you're going to do certain things and feel certain pressures. And if you're out of the group, you're going to have others. So it seems like the more classic one is the out of the group people, right? You feel not popular, not pretty, not smart. And I think those people then probably present as the withdrawn symptoms, I assume, or the angry symptoms, or they're no long. The word in, I love this word because I think it's so cool and I can't spell it, but it's anhedonia.
Yes. Yes.
Anhedonia was the only thing I learned during my therapy, my psych rotation, which is the lack of joy in anything.
Yes.
And it was such a powerful term, and it was like it resonated with me. It's like depression equates anhedonia. There is no joy. Like a puppy doesn't bring you joy. Okay, well, there's definitely something wrong there, right?
Right.
So I think those are more classic ones, right? Your child feels left out of the main bubble. And then they do the more classic things that you just described. I have an interesting thing, which is I'm concerned about the ones that are in the bubble. This is a new thing, which is now I have to maintain this sort of cool image. What do you find are the symptoms of that? And how do you see those two individual children being different? One that's in the group and has to constantly stay popular for the sake of image, and one that can't get in the group because they're just not cutting it at that time in adolescence.
Right. So I think you talked about the in-group one first, so we'll talk about that one first. When you're in the group, you may see your child, again, clothing styles, makeup, they may change what they're eating. They may be eating less because part of being in the in-group is to have a particular body size or body shape, right? And the kids often become kind of irritable. They become very short with you. We think of, as you mentioned, anhedonia with adults. We think of anhedonia and depression. They're in a dark room and they're eating ice cream and playing Hallmark movies. But in adolescence, it tends to actually lead to anger and fighting.
So you think the popular, again, I'm just arbitrating, creating two categories of individuals. Naturally, there is an overlap in symptomology, right? The person who's depressed may have an eating disorder and get skinny, and the person who's popular and wants to fit in that size 0 is going to be. So I'm not saying that they're clear cut, but I do imagine that they're slightly different in your needs to stay. You're constant. I feel like as an adolescent, you're just trying to wait for the shit to pass. So
that's true. But you're just up and up and up is part of it, right? You're just up like, oh, I have to stay up. I can't get enough sleep because I have to post this and I need to do that. Or I have to plan this party. And if it's not just totally right, then everything's going to go terribly. And often with anxiety, it may be in that kid who's, the A+ student, right? And what is the mental load that it's taking that student to maintain that GPA, to maintain that position? And at some point, almost every kid will crash.
Of course.
Right? And so maybe they're coming in and they're having frequent headaches, or they're having lots of sore throats. I think I have strep again. You just had strep last week. It's unlikely. But, there are these, if I have physical things, then maybe it will get me out of that social commitment.
I think the interesting thing, and I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like the ones that are in the group, they become a little not so nice, right? Because there's a clickiness and a sort of social pecking order. There's a demand on you to perform. It's like being in a fraternity or being, I don't think it's that different between a child and an adult. If anything, the children are a little more transparent than adults. But
yes,
I feel like, like you said, you tend to change your clothes. Whereas if you're depressed, you tend to not give a shit and you tend to just be like, whatever. Whereas if you're sort of feeling the pressure to stay at the very best, you constantly want new clothes or you want a newer outfit because the one before is not
the new phone.
It's not the newest, and that's not the image that social influencers are pushing out. So I think that there are some subtleties. I think it's just paying attention to your child and sensing that, hey, this has been going on a bit of time, and sort of then. So that I'm going to get into in the second half, sort of what do you do once you've picked up on these things? But I still want to focus just a little bit more. So the social media, from what you're describing, the issues in general, one is that it's constant.
Yeah.
2 is that you can't control what's being seen. 3 is it's a vehicle for bullying, which again, I'll come back to at the end because I think that's a very specific item.
Yes.
I want just general, I'm in it and I don't realize it's happening to me kind of things. Anything else about social media in general that's unique and different to just going to school? I mean, we've gone to school for eons, right? You go to school and shit happens. But now this is a different world. So is there anything else that you think that's so specific to social media that isn't so that's different than, say, something else?
It's very rapid fire. So you're constantly getting a new image. So if you look at, for example, television shows or cartoons, decades ago, they'd be on the same screen for 5 minutes, right? And you just maybe have a couple people moving a little bit. If you watch cartoons and TV shows now, it's like bam, 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 bam. There's something constantly going. There's big, bright lights, and it's this constant input. And so with social media, it's very easy. Scroll, 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 next video, next video, next video. Like I will ask my patients, it's like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm on YouTube. Okay, what do you watch on YouTube? Oh, whatever it suggests for me. Right? So it's this idle consumption of data, as you were saying, as opposed to being very specific about it. And the challenge is that it accesses our reward centers in our brain. So then we get this little dopamine hit, and dopamine feels good. It makes us like, it's a little uplifting. We're like, yay, that was great. But it's also kind of like a drug because it hits those same reward centers, and it is as addictive as cocaine. And as a general rule, we're not telling our patients, and not at all. And, parents aren't saying to their kids, hey, let's go here's a gram of cocaine, let's go do it. But they're handing them a phone, which is equally as addictive. And how do they get out of it? So a lot of students, a lot of our adolescents, when they put down the phone, they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah. There's
right?
definitely no question
they
about
don't have that. They're just like feeling.
It's funny you should mention that because my wife, obviously we co-parent because we're parents, but my wife spends a lot of time with my son. And so she has some strict ideas. And I think that her ideas are really good because she does a lot of homework. And so, for example, as an 18-month-old, if you notice, a lot of the shows are CoComelon. And CoComelon's a super popular show. It's super neon-based, very loud audio, very bright images, very large images. And it's, if you will, a stimulus overload of students. Yeah. Whereas what we have my son watch is something called Mrs. Rachel, which is some lady who teaches kids about, B is for boy. So there's some academic education component, but more importantly, everything is slow. The other thing she watches is this, my wife's half Finnish, and we watch something called Muumilaakso or Moominville or Moomi. It's like this really old cartoon, and it's like shit by today's standards. It's like even slower than Tom and Jerry, but it's very matted. The voices are slow, the images are slow, and I think that is what you were referring to in terms of stimulus overload.
It's too much.
The other thing that you said, which is I think ultimately the issue, is that you become addicted to the phone. And it's not by any means an adolescent phenomenon because as a grown-ass man, I find that when my phone is away from me, I begin to have a slight sense of anxiety as something is off. And I find myself sitting, watching my son, and then having this intrusive idea of, where's my phone? I should check something. All the while, I'm fully aware that this is insane. I'm here with my 18-month-old son. So if I, as a grown, conscious adult, is feeling that, then obviously when you take the phone away from your child, they're going to feel some very strong separation, as does a drug being removed from a drug addict. And so there is that whole sort of drug addicted feel, which is the whole dopamine neurotransmitter kind of thing. Yeah. The key component of it, though, which is so specific to social media, is the likes. They have found the way to take something That's imagery and whatnot. So let's imagine all of social media existed without any way of letting the posting individual know you like the image. Just imagine all of social media, all the content, all the images, everything exists, except you can't tell that person you do or don't like it. Liking it means you give it a heart. Unliking it means you say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just no one is commenting. In a billion years, it wouldn't be as popular as it is.
Correct.
You are seeking approval.
Correct. I mean, that's what you do as an adolescent. You are trying on different personalities. Today, I'm going to wear a black hat. Next week, I'm going to be joining the band. The next week, I'm going to be trying out for the soccer team. Like, you are trying to figure out who you are as an individual, and you're looking for that feedback from your peers. You look for that feedback from the society in general. But if the adults in your life aren't engaging with you in a meaningful way, then you're just going to be getting, the feedback from your peers in person or the peers online. Like, a lot of my patients, their best friends are all online because they're having difficulties actually having a conversation human to human, face to face, or eyeball to eyeball, as I say.
Well, so the question I have for you every time I say, so if as a grown-ass adult, meaning coped in life and whatever, you are constantly on your phone, you do more salacious things, like being more sexual for likes, because that's your way of feeling appreciated and loved. This is a grown 38-year-old woman with 2 kids. This is a grown man with runs a business. What on earth do you expect from a 9-year-old?
Right.
Like, of course they're going to feel that you're doing as an adult.
Yeah.
And this idea of inability to communicate person to person, I see it every day, which is that people have no, I call them keyboard warriors. Keyboard warriors is I have the ability to write anything with confidence, but I can't look you dead in the eye without turning away and saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's very easy, right? I mean, you're online, you're anonymous, you can say whatever you want, you're super confident, but actually saying the same thing to the person face to face is very hard. But talking to people face to face is a skill, and it's a skill you can cultivate. So it's not...
It's crazy. It's crazy that we call talking to humans a skill now. You recognize that, right? Like,
yes,
that's insane. Having the ability to communicate is a really important asset. No, it's just human. Like, you need to talk to people. Anyway, obviously I'm super frustrated and passionate about this, and we'll get into in a second. We're going to take a break and come back, and I want to chat about. Okay, so now we talked about this. Oh, the world is terrible. Oh, the world is terrible. Oh, the world is terrible. Now what do I do about it? What the hell do I do about it? I have a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 12-year-old. What do I do? Dr. Bowers, I need your help. Please help me. Well, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll talk about what are the solutions, or at least what can I try to do. All right, guys, you can take a quick break. We'll be right back with Plastic Surgery Uncensored. All right, welcome back to the second half of Plastic Surgery Uncensored. Actually, off stage, we were starting to talk, and I'm like, stop, Tio, don't talk. Because our producer, Maria, wanted us to chat about, we've been focusing, obviously, in young adults, right? 9, 10, 11, 7, sort of that age. And she was saying, well, a big issue when it comes to plastic surgery, because this is a plastic surgery show, is then they become like 18 to 21, and then they want to go be like, Haley Berry or Halle, whatever, who these people, Beaver, I always screw this up. I don't know, Bella Hadid or whoever. Kylie Jenner or whatever. And so what I was saying was that the reason we're focusing on the young adolescents rather, is because that's when you can do something. That is the intervention point. I'm sorry to tell you that when your child is 18, shy of withholding money from them, they're going to give you the bird, the big ass finger, and tell you to go fuck yourself.
Yep.
And they're going to go with their friend to Modesto to go to a clinic to go get their BBL, and you're shit out of luck because it's only $1,800 and they scraped it together by getting on OnlyFans or getting money through selling something on eBay. You can make money in a blink of an eye on the internet.
We're stealing,
whatever. So the reason we're focusing on the conversation on adolescents is they're still under your sphere. And once the horse is out of the barn, you're going to have a very hard time getting it back in the barn. So let's chat. What do we do as parents when our child is starting to demonstrate signs of anxiety, withdrawn, depression, eating disorder as a result of social media impact? Dr. Bowers, tell me what we do.
So number one, parents need to be involved in their children's lives, their adolescent lives, pre-challenges. So we have to have that baseline. I always think of it like baking a cake. You have to have the cake. You have to have your foundation in place. So that means that you're having, dinners together as a family every night, that you are having no electronics at meal times, that you maybe even have 24 hours once a week, just one 24-hour period where there are no electronic devices being used in your home. In order to make that be successful, you as a parent have to model the behavior. If you're telling your child, oh, put down your phone, oh, you've spent too much time on social media, and they turn and look at you and you're scrolling as you say that, they're going to be like hypocrite. And rightfully so, that if you want them to model do a particular behavior, you need to model that behavior. So, and then in order to actually engage in that, you have to make it be fun to be with you, right? So if you take away the phone, but you haven't replaced it with some other activity, it's going to be a vacuum. And the kids are going to say, maybe they will give you some hand gestures, right? They're going to this stinks. Why do I want to hang out with you? You have to make it enticing to hang out with their parents, to hang out with their family, get a bunch of board games, have some of them be whatever the latest hip board game. Even if you as the parent are like, I don't know how to play this, they'll teach you. Engage in something that they're interested in. Go for a walk after dinner, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be forever, but start small and then continue to expand. If you've laid the foundation, then when there is a change, you will notice it. The challenge is a lot of people don't have the foundation, right? And so now you're trying to say, oh, well, was there a difference? Was there not a difference? If you, at any point in time, you are seeing a change in your child, talk to them. They won't talk to you. Talk to your pediatrician about them. Talk to a trusted counselor. Talk to another adult and engage them in your child's care. Do not try to do this all alone. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if it's too much, if it's bringing up, memories for you of your childhood and you are not able to engage in a way that is helpful to your child or adolescent, have somebody else. Our kid has a broken leg. We as a parent, unless we're an orthopedic surgeon, we're not going to take them to the emergency room. We're not going to take them to the OR and repair the leg. We're going to go to the pediatrician. We're going to get a referral to the orthopedist. We're going to engage that team to help give the best care for our child. This is the same thing. Anxiety, depression, ADHD, eating disorders. You need to have a team in place to really help your child.
So let me see if I get this straight. You want me to be a good parent. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
I want you to be
Dr.
Bowers, Dr. Bowers, don't you have another solution? That's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So what you stated is the obvious, which is the more engaged you are in your children's lives, the more likely they are, A, to stray less. They're grounded, they're connected, they're hooked onto something with roots. And when they stray, if they stray, they're more likely to boomerang back. And you'll have a few more options. So number one is, I love it, baseline. You got to have a good relationship with your child so that you have some insurance policy, some street cred, some reserve. So when it goes awry, you have something. The second is do as I say, not as I do, right? Do as I do, not do as I say. So absolutely, you shouldn't smoke, okay? But your car stinks of cigarettes. Right. You shouldn't stay up and, gamble, right? That's obvious. Your children mimic their parents. The other day, my 18-month-old started walking around, grabbed my cell phone and started babbling like at the top of his lungs. And it was hilarious, but somewhat frightening because he was mimicking me walking around the house, just yelling at, what do you mean they sell the gun? You know, and so my wife looks at him and she's like, look, you're creating a mini me. Yeah. So if at 18 months they do that, let alone when they have
so observant
mind. The last is that you need to be their fun parent, not their friend parent.
Correct.
So I think this is a big underscore. This is a huge issue of contention amongst parents. I am not an expert, but I can tell you what I think. You are not their friend.
Correct.
You understand? You're their parent. It's reverence. It's understanding. It's discipline. It's boundaries, but you're fun. You're cool. You're down. Unless they do something, in which case, oh shit, my dad's pissed off. Because hopefully you're a reasonable individual and they said something that deserves it. So be fun. You don't need to be their friend.
Right. Boundaries are love. I just want to point out boundaries are love. Kids who do not have boundaries in their life, especially those younger kids, but even the older ones, they will push because they want to know someone cares about them enough to say, this is too far. Right?
Yeah.
No, you can't cross the street. You know, there's cars coming. I want you to stay alive, right? No, you know what? Perhaps those aren't the best people to hang out with, right? You know, I think we do need to study before we go out and play online or whatever. But having some boundaries to show this is how we get through life as a human, to be a functional human in society. I love you. I'm giving you some boundaries. And if you push and you get to that boundary edge, I'm going to push back. I'm not hurting you, pushing you, but I'm going to let you know, yep, that's the boundary. And it's going to be the boundary every single time. Because when kids are with someone where the boundaries are chaotic, they become chaotic.
I mean, listen, this is terrible, but if dogs need it, then adults. I mean, animals love boundaries and discipline, and they do better in environments where they have rules and they know what to follow and they have organization. Your child has the rest of their lives to figure shit out for themselves and find out what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it. But it is your obligation, your responsibility to create the framework in which they need to then play. And, you know, your job is to be the left and the right bumper so they don't drive off of the cliff, and you can do whatever you want to do within these two lines. So you said, obviously, in the best case scenario, if you have this foundation, you'll notice changes early. And then when you have noticed changes early, then you have engagements of dialogue and you intervene. And naturally, like most things, the more people that intervene together, the better. You don't have to do this alone. I got that part. Now I want to know, what do we do in the difficult child who then pushes back and doesn't do what a more easygoing child would do? So, for example, you notice your child's getting a little withdrawn, maybe a little edgy, whatever those things that we mentioned. You talk to them. They're like, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's this group of girls and they open up to you because you have a foundation. And then you're like, well, I understand. And then you enlist the help of, I don't know, a teacher, a counselor, whatever. And together you work through it. Awesome.
Yeah.
A+. What if
way to go, parent. High five.
What if you don't do that? What if you come and it's late and they're starting to get really toxic and you don't know how to derail them? Do you ground them? Do you take their phone away from them? What is our phase 2? Like, what's the next level? Forget about parenting 101 that works. Talk to me, Dr. Bauer. Tell me what I do if the shit is the fan. Because so not everyone's going to follow those.
Really, it's the same as you as a parent need to check yourself and not react emotionally. Because your
child is acting crazy. You want me to be
right? So your kid's already off the fan. Your kid's off the road. If you just start grounding them and there is no light at the end of the tunnel for them, so it's like, oh, you did that, you're grounded for a week. Oh, you did that, you don't have that. Oh, you did, and so then that's feeding into there is no point. And so who cares? I'm already in trouble. I might as well continue to act poorly. You know, that's not a super conscious decision, but it's what happens to them. It's, you know, I might as well continue to act poorly. I'm already down, right? I'm already down. So you have to engage with them to say, yes, this is what's not going well. These are the consequences. This is how you get back to what you want. And then you have to stick with it. Remember, an adolescent's brain their frontal lobe starts developing at age 12. It's developing at age 25.
What does the frontal lobe do, and what is that? What you cut
The
out
frontal lobe is your executive functioning. This is like the CEO. This helps you plan ahead. It says, I want to go to college. I want to go to trade school. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to buy a house? How do I do all those things, right? So when you're 12, it's like just coming online.
And then what happens by 25, you said?
In theory, 25, it's fully online.
Oh, wow. That's not true at all. I know shit ton of
ADHD
40s that don't know shit.
Oh, for sure, right? If you've had drug use, if you've, anything that doesn't make you 100% quote unquote neurotypical, it will be delayed, right?
Okay.
Or if you've had any trauma in your life and that you haven't addressed, it will be delayed. But regardless, you still need a team. Talk to your pediatrician. If you go to family practice, talk to whoever your child's primary is and say, this is what we are struggling with.
What are some big ticket items that you can do? Should you take the phone away from them if you've noticed them that you're a little past immediate communication?
Yeah. So you have to sit down with them. So is there a reason that you have to have the phone? Right.
Yes, I need the phone because I need to stay in touch with my friends.
Right. So let's work on some alternative ways that we can communicate with our
Mom,
friends.
nobody does anything but is on social media. Everyone's on TikTok. Mom, you don't know what you're talking about.
I know. I totally have these conversations.
I know. I'm playing that
you bring kids over. You have family play dates, and I know that's not quite the right word for the adolescent, but you have an entire family over so you can get to know the parents of your child's friends, and you have a big barbecue so that the party is at your house. You don't need a phone because the party's there. You can still have your kids do some of it, but you need to follow it. They need to show you what they're seeing. And then you can have time limits. When you do your homework, then you can have this, right? The challenge is some kids will go get a burner phone, right? They'll get a secondary phone that they hide from their parents. They'll create fake social media accounts, right? I mean, adolescents are super smart. They'll do all these things. They'll just use it at school. They'll have their, one at their friend's house. But you have to find ways, reminding your child what they used to enjoy and maybe engaging in that. I think another key thing that we're really missing as a society is engagement, volunteering, having other people expecting you to show up. How can I find something that gets me outside of my brain, outside of myself? Right?
Yeah.
So volunteering in a food bank, you're doing something for the good of somebody else who doesn't have potentially as much as you do. And getting that in your brain, cultivating that gratitude so that you get those dopamine hits, but it's not from the likes on social media.
Got it. So let's do a little synopsis here. So we obviously talked about the degradation that social media creates. So the way to it's going to happen to everybody. It happens to adults. And the matter of what we're talking about is controlling the amount of degradation that occurs. I don't think there's ever a way to prevent it from happening. You're trying to limit the damage. And the question is, okay, now that this is happening to my child, what do I do about it? And the answer is good parenting. It'll always be good parenting. 100 years from now, it'll be good parenting because the social interactions between a child and their parent will never be trumped by any other technology or any other moment or any other event. So it's about spending the higher number of quality moments you spend together. The more likely your child is to not steer away, and the more likely they are to return, and the faster they'll respond to any intervention you do. So there is no shortcut, and you have to put in the groundwork. And if you haven't and you notice, then the answer is go back to the basics. And, I think that the things that you meant is try, in order to prevent this from happening, limit tech time, limit the amount of activity they have on this device. Try to be involved with them on that platform so you know what they're seeing to the extent that you can. Create activities that are non-phone based that give them dopamine, like being on a soccer team, playing a piano and having a recital, love skateboarding in a park, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Physical activity is huge.
Right. And try to create as many human-to-human interactions as opposed to tech interactions as possible. Sounds like sort of the essential ways to go about it. Would you say that that's a good summary?
Yes. Yeah. And as you said, be a quote-unquote good parent. We all can strive to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do as a parent. And we're all going to have days where it's not so great, right? We all have bad days. But if your overarching goal is this is my big, hairy, audacious goal, and I'm going to take all these little steps to get there because my goal is to create a great human, then you will achieve that. It's when we sort of keep, don't have our eyes on that goal, or we stop taking those steps, or even us as adults go, ugh, you know what? I spent too much time on social media today. I feel yuck. Like, ugh, how am I going to tell my kid tomorrow's another day? We're going to try again. Like, give yourself the space and the grace to say it's okay to have a bad day, but go ahead and move forward and try again. There are other groups out there, like the Wait Until 8 movement, which is really to say, let's not give this technology to our children and our adolescents until they're in at least 8th grade, right?
Yeah,
Let them have a little more brain development.
It's interesting, and I wrote that down here. A friend of mine, obviously you have a great deal of pressure. Your child is the only one without something. You're questioning whether or not you're creating more damage than helping them. Like, you don't want them to have an insecurity that they were the only one without that backpack.
Right.
So one of the things that you say to yourself is they need it for safety. Well, we live in the era of iPhone. We live in the era of iWatches. And the reality is that you can talk to your child, and my friend does. She has no phone, and she talks to her through the phone on her watch. And it really limits her social media because she can call her, hey, Mom, I'm outside. Come pick me up. Mom, where are you? I don't feel good, Mom. And she can still yet get to her and know where she is. So, and by no means was I suggesting, it's as simple as just be a good parent.
For sure.
As a matter of fact, that is a massively difficult thing to do. And it is not any given day, and it's not any given moment, but the sum total of the number of activities you take. And there are many days I come home as 18 months old, which is not even parenting at that point. You're just hanging out. And I'm burnt out and tired and frustrated and irritable. So I'm all I'm saying is that there is no special tool. There is no special trick. There is no shortcut.
There's no pill that makes you a better parent.
Yeah, but
it's not magic.
Just like good medicine. Good medicine is old-fashioned, taking your time. A good surgical closure is a lot of suturing. These are all things that, beautiful painting takes a ton of time. A nice mural takes time. Amazing tapestry takes time. A great dinner takes time. There's no shortcut in quality. So if you want a quality child, you need to be a quality parent, which means plenty of time.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And the time may be when you want it to happen, or the time may be when your child's ready to talk. And so you as a parent have to be open to those, because all day it can be like, fine, yuck, go away. And then right about the time that you want to go to bed, or you're trying to put them to bed, it's like, hey, so there's this thing I wanted to talk about. Do you have time?
No, I got to go.
Yeah, the answer needs to always be yes.
Yeah.
You need to say yes. Because the more yeses they hear from you, they're not going to be looking to other people for yeses.
That's true. Well,
right. Having that trusted adult in their life is one, and hopefully the trusted adult is you, their parents, right? But having a trusted adult is a huge resiliency factor for any adult.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll talk to you in a couple of years when my kid is giving me the bird. And he's sneaking out at night and smoking pot and driving my cars. I don't know.
Yeah, the 4-year-old, that's going to be brutal, man.
I know. Well, at any rate, we really appreciate having you on. It was always, this conversation never gets old. It's never going to be a bad subject matter. We're going to keep talking about it. Obviously, as a plastic surgeon, I feel a sense of responsibility because although I didn't build social media, part of the images one sees and that's causing people to go off the deep end is the body-related images. And so we, as plastic surgeons, are contributing. Dr. Hilary Bowers from San Diego, where can people reach out to if they want to follow up with questions and they said, oh my God, I want to ask this woman something about X, Y, and Z? Where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Hilary Bowers.
Oh, ironic.
I know, right? So HILARYBOWERSMD. They can also go to my company website. There is a way that we can communicate. That's cpcmg.net, www.cpcmg.net.
Love it. Well, it was very kind of you to be on the show. We always appreciate anyone who's an expert who's willing to take time out of their busy schedule to participate. Hopefully, as the listener, you got walk away with some insight. As always, I have 2 requests at the end of every show. Number 1 request is, if you like our show, please share it with people that you love. Send it to them. You never know when they will benefit from the information that we're talking about. Always download and subscribe and share. The second thing I ask in every single time is, if you love our show, go write something nice for the love of God. We are a society of complainers. Negative. I hated the food here. So we never seldom ever say anything positive. So if you like our show, go write something nice. It makes me feel good. All right, guys, that's another wrap. Until next week, to another episode, I'm your host, Dr. Rahban, signing off on Plastic Surgery Uncensored.